Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and welcome to the one and only live podcast on the interwebs that talks about tabletop role-playing games, hosted by yours truly. But today, we are going to finish out about 4 days of talking about non-tabletop role-playing mechanisms that can kind of help us with our world building and our setting creation and that kind of things. yeah, don't look behind you. Surrounded. I got my gang with me. Thank you very much, guys, for being part of the show. Talking about social order and all that kind of stuff. I see you guys, but I thought we would have a little bit of fun. This is something that is not on the actual interwebs. This is something that's just out of my head. And it made me think about Westerns and Eastern storytelling. And then I said, well, how come there are no Southern and Northern? And essentially, it's the idea of is your setting basically order and law, or is it chaos and disorder? And when your players are thrown into the mix, they're the monkey wrench. They're the ones that are going to disrupt what's going on. Are they bringing with them law and order, establishing law and order, or are they bringing with them their own disorder and chaos? Now, we are not going to go in what is order and what is chaos, but essentially, this is a great way for us in our session 0 to come to the players and just express, like, okay, what kind of storytelling what do you want to do? Are you there to disrupt what's going on, or are you there to subside what's going on? And so we're going to go into the 4-point. I will describe to you a 4-point theme, and then we can decide from there what our setting represents, or at least when our players get involved, we aren't. It's not a question of what the players want, because many times what happens is those of us that suffer from world builder's disease, we may establish in our heads we want complete order in our setting. We have our cities and communities, and we've located rivers and secrets and dungeons and different types of political machinations. Then our players get involved, and the first thing they do is disrupt the entire thing. And sometimes it gets us upset. And so maybe it's just a misalignment of the expectations. And so I'd like to describe that here. Getting into our co-hosts here. Yeah, Mike says, hearing Ledger's Joker portrayal again, it's all part of the plan, and I'm an agent of chaos. Yeah, sometimes players maybe not in the outfit, but they kind of play a Joker-like character in your very ordered world and such, and that could be a little bit of an issue. Yeah. Drew says, orders just in your head, perceives patterns in the world. We are excellent pattern recognition machines, aren't we? As human beings, even when there isn't any, we love to establish some sort of pattern, or at least we use it as a survival tool. So yeah. Yeah. Taste of It says, world builder's disease, is that similar to lycanthropy? Yes, although instead of being bitten on the neck, it usually bites us in the ass. So but yes. Yeah. The Ant King says, order. Everything has stats. You keep track, carry weight. Then chaos is like, oh, we can just say we have arrows. It's fine. I don't mean that specifically, but yeah, I guess there's a little bit of that. Oh man. Okay, so no, Mike, no, wait. Okay, so here's the deal. A Western. So let's describe like our very generalized Western, Eastern, Northern, Southern. So using the trope of the Western, the country Western story trope, is often a story of chaos with our heroes bringing law and order. So in a Western, our bad guys often come across as the most civilized beings, and our heroes are often recognized as being agents of chaos, but actually they're flipped. So in a Western story type of setting, you have um, you have an open range of freedom, and usually our bad guys speaking and acting with very genteel type of language will come into a region and they will establish so-called order. The problem is they're evil, and it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to get crushed. Your answer to their demands, whether they are robber barons or um, they are an oppressive. They're trying to create a railroad, and they're just going to blast through your land. They're oil barons. It's gold rush time, and a lot of our bad guys in a Western, although they talk highfalutin and they come across as civilized, they're actually agents of chaos. No matter what you do, you're going to get punished. And then our hero, often categorized as being chaotic, they are the lone gunmen. Our heroes are often recognized as being very violent, or they are gamblers, they are runabouts, they have no they don't want to lay down roots, and they are pulled into a conflict, and our protagonists, our heroes, are there to crush the evil, and they bring law, they bring order into a world of chaos. Now, there's another one. Drew says, I'm glad I do not suffer from world builder's disease. I usually have just a theme and improvise pretty much everything from there. Um, I also hope that some of these touch points, these foundations, these little intricacies help us improvise, because for from a person that suffered very much from world builder's disease, of building too much and never using any of it, and then getting frustrated when players come in and pretty much light a fire to all of it. Uh, it's very much time to not do that, and I've fallen very much into the improv, like Drew is like, yeah, there's a lot of disparate functions and things that instead of putting them together and making them congeal and have my players destroy it, I just have them separated, and it just works out better. Sly Flourish has a video out, like eight ways to have an improvised world building, and it's pretty interesting. It's just basically like, here are 8 things that you do for your next session, and it's pretty good. Maybe I'll do that at the end of this. So yeah, like Caligula says, building too much. You could use the rest for a novel or something. Yeah, there is that too. Yeah, hi-oh, silver. Okay, so a Western is very much a world of chaos, and our protagonists bring in order. They bring in stability. Their wildness allows civilization to grow in a world of chaos. Now, we do have another one, which I'm calling an Eastern. And an Eastern is law and order versus law and order. So, do I actually write fiction? I don't consider myself to be a writer at all. Part of it is imposter syndrome. Like, basically, all of us are really storytellers. I just don't consider myself to be good enough yet. So I don't know if that's a truism, like I really don't have the skill to do it, or I think I don't have it, but there's something in me where it's true. So no, I've never written anything like a novel or short stories or anything, but I'm always coming up with them in my head. So when I was an only child, I used to play with myself, and a lot of those involved fictional characters in my head doing things and such. Yeah, you're very much a George R. R. Martin, not an outliner, but not a builder, but a sculptor. That's what, not gardener. I'm sorry, builders and gardeners. Yeah, very much a gardener. Yeah, imposter syndrome is all make believe. Yeah, that's a T-shirt. Yeah, taste. Yeah, that's a great T-shirt. Yeah. Drew says, indeed, that is why I love your channel. You give me plenty of ideas I can add to my repertoire to pull from. And I mean, that's really what I like to do, right? Like maybe there's like 5 things you're going, DBJ, that I would never do that. But if you've got one thing you kind of put in your toolbox and then maybe pull that out later, that's me. The End King says, DBJ, you're good enough. People have turned their internet fan fiction to best-selling novels. That's actually very true. You don't actually have to make anything good. well, okay. There is a difference between great and good, or good or perfect. Perfect almost never gets done. Good enough often gets produced lots of times, right? So, novelists, script writers, all that kind of stuff. All of us have seen things, and we're like scratching our heads, like, how the fuck did that get made? And the reason is because someone made it, right? There's 1,000 people with great ideas that have never done anything. It only takes the one with a fairly good idea to keep doing that over and over again to get work. So yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly. Shit lords with the burn. Ooh, ouch. I've also heard the term like it it takes a creator, you have to get out like 1,000 hours of your worst to get to your 10,000 hours of your best or something like that. I don't remember how it was worded, and I don't know who worded it, but yeah, it's something like you have to write or create past your worst to get to your best. Something like that. Like there's some people that are today are brilliant, and you look at them and you're like, oh man, that's great. Yeah, and we like Christopher Nolan as a director, right? We're like, oh, he's great. We haven't seen his from the beginning of his career, like long before he was making movies that we actually saw. What was he writing and creating that was his worst to get to that best part, right? And that's what it really takes. Yeah. Perfect is an illusion, like order or control are. Yeah, but we like to do it. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, Shitlord says that was not a burn. It's the mindset I need to get anything done. That is true. And I think that coincides with what I was saying as well. Like sometimes you just gotta like, look, this is just going to be bad. So let's hurry up and get this over with so we can get to the good stuff. Oh, thanks there, Mike. I'm not going to put that out. That's thank you very much for the pat on the back. I really appreciate it. All right, so the Eastern. What is so we got the Western. It's chaos, and our heroes come in, and even for a short amount of time, Mad Max, the whole Mad Max series, Mad Max Fury Road, Mad Max the Road Warrior, is a world of chaos. And in that world of chaos, despite our evil entities seemingly creating order, they're not. They're agents of chaos. There's nothing that humanity can do to appease the overlords that represent. Now, they pretend to bring order, but they're really agents of chaos. But our hero, our lone hero, who seems of animalistic, brutal chaos, is there to bring order and stability. Even if that order and stability is simply having the freedom to make one's choice to live their life. Okay. But in an Eastern, it's order versus order, law versus law. It's tradition versus tradition. It is law versus law on the same page. Often noir stories and police procedurals, medical procedurals fall into this category where we an Eastern, and I'm thinking of your classic samurai. Let's go with that. Knights orders also run in this. Sometimes religious stories run in this line as well. But let's go with a cinematic samurai story, not necessarily historic, but let's go with tabletop role playing and cinematic samurai. And this is a story that begins with a set of rules. There's a way you act. There are rules in place in society that you're not supposed to break. And then our main protagonists have to navigate the rules of the society to solve a problem, to maybe bring light to the fact that maybe our rules are being misused, corrupted. They exist for a purpose. We're here to remind everybody, no, here's the good reason for having these rules in place. Now, sometimes some of those rules can be very oppressive and are difficult for our protagonists to navigate. But when they do so successfully, other people go, oh, I see what we did wrong. Let's reinstate these other rules to make things better. Now, sometimes our main protagonists in Law versus Law, they kind of martyr themselves. A true martyrdom is they literally sacrifice their life. They kill themselves to make a point. Other times they realize they don't fit into the law and order that is represented. And so they have to use a little bit of chaos to get where they need to go. But essentially, they're fighting for law. So that's a law versus law system where you have an Eastern, and the players are expected to respect the rules that exist. So for those who don't know, there's a game, of course, called The Five Rings. And in Legend of the Five Rings, you basically play cinematic samurai. And that game doesn't work with players who are rule breakers, who don't consider their ancestors, their behavior, their respect to higher authorities, the way they treat underlings. For players that don't understand that concept, it won't work in that kind of setting. And so there are people who love themselves some Legend of Five Rings. I like the world of Five Rings. I'm not really a fan of the meta narrative that keeps. There's a meta history that some people keep up with, and I'm not really a fan of that. I like to come into a world where whenever I want to and however I want to, and let me and my players manipulate it the way they want to. But the game itself is excellent, and it's not really about like how strong or fast you are. It's how you do a thing, and I like that. Yeah, Mike says, I look back on my early writing and DMing and cringe. Oh, I do all the time. Yeah, I do all the time. Yeah. Shai says, perfectionists ruin everything. They're the reason my new band has been making new songs since 2020 and still doesn't have an album out. Oh, no. Yeah. Perfectionism. Yeah. Sometimes you just have to release the thing and do the thing. Yeah. Thunderdome, 2 game masters go in, 1 leaves. Exactly. Yep. Bernard says, Eastern, time for a Romanian shepherd versus werewolf setting. Ooh. I like that. Mike says, Road Warrior is very much a Western. Yep, lone gunman wanders into a besieged town surrounded by outlaws. It's classic spaghetti Western writing, right down to the sawed-off shotgun. Yep, and nickel-plated revolver. It very much is. And the unnamed, the essential, yes, he's got a name. I know, the Road Warrior, Max Rockatansky or whatever. Anyway, but he's basically the unnamed gunman, right? And he's so anti-civilization, he can't see himself in the world that he's helping to create, right? Yep, Road Warrior is a philosophical statement about the futility of being. Yep, lone gunman, stupid Motorola. Vampire the Masquerade is very much order versus order. I like that too. Yes, very much about vampires can't exist without the order, and yes, there's internal politics, but it is very much order versus order. And there's a lot of fun in order versus order stories because, one, all of us being on the same page of what the rules are is there's an intricacy in learning what the rules are and accepting the rules in the first place, and then how far do we go in breaking the rules to get the rules back to where we want to get them again? And so there's a little bit of that. Yep. Yeah, I hear you, Shice. Shitlord says, Mad Max is what happens when you lose your family but choose not to off yourself. Very much so. Mad Max is almost he's not really human anymore. He's almost a a force of he he can't he's gotten to the point where he can't die, and he's searching for a purpose. And even the portrayal of his mindset in the Mad Max Fury Road, it's like he's searching for something, and it's almost like he's trying to forgive himself for the guilt and all that kind of business. It's pretty cool. It's a great storytelling technique, because technically Mad Max really isn't the protagonist of his own story. He's he's like a secondary character that we follow him, and to see through his eyes this other story. It's kind of cool. So we have ourselves chaos versus order, right? Chaos versus law. So the first word is what the setting is. The second one is what our protagonists are. So we've got chaos. A lot of post-apocalyptic stories are pure chaos, with our protagonists bringing in order. And sometimes the protagonists don't even realize that they're doing that. We also have order versus order stories. And again, sometimes order versus order stories are there's a subtlety to it, in terms of whether you've seen like your classic samurai stories, stories about knights and knighthood, stories about religion, stories about intricate tradition and things of that nature, and not breaking those traditions. Because a lot of times when we see those order versus order stories, we kind of bristle, because we realize, like, we almost want to say, draw your weapon and kill that mofo. Like, there is no reason you need to respect these people, and yet they still do it, right? And so it can be frustrating, but it's also brilliant, because it also means that our protagonists have such strength of character that, yes, they could kill our bad guys in an instant, but they still recognize what the rules are, and they still follow those rules and stuff. Yeah, Mike says Fury Road goes into PTSD versus facing yourself. Yeah, and Fury Road shall not be watched in deference of childhood. Oh no, Fury Road is a great movie. It is a brilliant movie. Yeah. Yeah, the baseline understanding of Batman is that he's order versus Joker's chaos. But when you stand back, it's Gotham's corruption and evil order that generated both of them. So you could say it's actually order versus chaos versus order. Yeah, yes, I agree with that. It's almost like people arguing over what is Batman's alignment in Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, is he chaotic good or is he lawful good, right? It's like that. Yeah, Caligula says it's far from the worst rehash. Yep, exactly. And again, the Mad Max stories are basically just the classic spaghetti westerns as well. And Shai says, as a vigilante, is Batman really order? Yeah, I don't know. This If you removed him out of Gotham, I think we could have a different discussion, because Gotham City very much is, like Mike was saying, like, is Gotham order or is it chaos? So, okay, we have two other types of stories. We have order and our characters bringing chaos, and then we have chaos with our characters bringing even more chaos. So, what is order versus chaos? I think Cyberpunk really embraces order versus chaos. Yes, in Cyberpunk we have ourselves mega corporations; they are the evil. But in a lot of stories where there's intense chaos, intense order, we see this a lot in stories with draconian systems, fascist systems where society has kind of given up its freedom to achieve some form of what they would consider peace and tranquility. Yet it's more status quo than there's any growth. It's not really happiness. It's more like, it's usually very gray. And then our heroes bring in chaos. Our heroes are like, listen, we're not trying to tell you what the new rules are going to be. We just need to rip down the old rules because the old rules suck. And that's where we get ourselves a huge rebellion story. Star Wars, of course, fits into this role. The order versus, sorry, let me go backwards a little bit. Order versus order could actually be Star Trek. Star Trek has Federation. It has a set of rules, and our crew in the Enterprise is always bumping up against those rules and then going, listen, is it rules as written or is it rules as intended? Essentially, right? So, but I would say like Cyberpunk is very much like, yes, I know evil corporations, evil society, oppressive society, and things like that. But our heroes tend not to be. They tend to be more immediate and trying to free a population that may have self-imposed their own order. Equilibrium, the movie Equilibrium, falls into this category as well. Uh, yeah, in a world without law, he is the enforcer. I agree with that. Batman's very much like that. Yeah, Mike says, well, yeah, that's subjective. When you ask him, Batman would say he's order, but the city would say he's chaos. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes I think our dis- we can say what we would think, or they can say what they would think, but they're coming across a little bit different, right? When we think of the Federation, when we think of the Empire, when we think of in the movie Equilibrium, they have the father, everyone taking prosium and stuff. If you ask the people are just like, no, it's pretty. I mean, it's all right. It's pretty cool. In Cyberpunk, they're like, well, life is tough, but at least I know what the rules are. But from the outside, we're like, this doesn't really work. This is an oppressive society. We need to take it down. Yeah, Shice is like, isn't the world run by a bunch of crooks? Yeah, Gotham essentially is just um run by evil. But would you consider it like lawful evil? Like everybody knows everyone's on the take? I don't know. Drew says Batman is order since he basically does the police work, pretty much like a surveillance state would do that. Okay, all right. Yeah, that's the argument, right? The Batman argument. Is he bringing law or is he bringing chaos? Some would say he's bringing law. He just can't work with the rules that are in the rules that exist in Gotham, which might be considered chaos. Yeah, because the average human being the average citizen can't get ahead because even if they follow the rules, they're going to get crushed. So I don't know. Cyberpunk shares the same setup as Star Wars. It's in an Empire Corporation versus Rebels. Yes. Now, I think the distinction with what my distinction would be in law and our characters are chaos versus chaos and our characters bring law. I think the difference is um, based on time. So in a Cyberpunk, Star Wars, Rebels, it's very much like we need to tear the system down. Now, what is the system after that? Short term rebellions, characters are like, we don't care. What we need to do is remove the old system. We'll have time for the next part. I think in chaos versus law, what happens is our main protagonists are like, no, we know long term, we know what civilization should be. We need to establish law and order first and over the chaos that exists. And so, like a post-apocalypse, you have we all know in post-apocalypse stories, humanity is the worst villain, and we can't have cannibals, we can't have sexual assault as a version of government, right? That we can't have that, right? So we got to take that down because we were once human beings, we were once civilized. We need to bring that back, and so that's why my difference between chaos versus law and law versus chaos. The second word being our main characters, and the first word being the setting. So now, which one is northern and southern? I don't know. I don't know. If I'm saying a western is a world of chaos with our heroes of law, and I'm saying an eastern is law versus law, and I'm using law as a very generalized thing, like not laws as like written in books, but um civilized, agreed upon behaviors amongst everyone in a society. Um, which one, like, is a northern chaos versus chaos and a southern chaos versus I'm sorry, yeah, law bringing in chaos. I don't know which one would be. You guys make that up, but I just thought it'd be kind of cool. Like, yeah, we've got westerns and easterns. What about northerns and southerns? Drew says this is the reason why I don't like the character. It is just propaganda in its worst form. Some would say that, although now that it depends. Do you think the Batman character, if Batman succeeded in cleaning up Gotham, would Batman retire? Or is Batman more of a fascist and keep that process going on, never stopping? Now, I think Batman's a little bit like, coo, coo, coo. You know, he's an obsessive and will always find something wrong, much like Rorschach, um, or Rorschach, whatever, from the Watchmen series. But in the Nolan movies, Batman had an end goal and retired when the system stopped. You know, so it depends on think that was done, how it's done. I don't know. I don't know. Cop again. I don't know. Well, see, because I know I know a lot about the comic book lore, and he's been very much not anti-police, but I don't know. It's weird. It's no, because those were corrupt police, so technically they weren't part of the system. I don't know. It makes me think about it. That's all. It makes me think about it. But I like to think about it though. I like stories like that. Mike says when you look at a crime drama like The Sopranos, you have an organization which law enforcement would classify as chaos, yet this organization has its own order while practicing chaos. It's tangled, and I love it. And that often it depends on who the protagonist is in a setting. Let's say we were making The Sopranos as a role playing game, right? And we are looking at a story from the point of view of who is the protagonist in the story. Then what we're looking at is, are the police so corrupt that the criminal organization is actually run better than the chaos that is coming from the police? In which case it kind of makes the mob the good guys, right? That's where a lot of the mobsters as protagonist stories have come from, where they become like, we're kind of rooting for the bad guy because much like Bonnie and Clyde, where you have like the Great Depression and police acting out of order and such, then our criminals are like, yeah, I'm kind of rooting for the bad guy. And a lot of that comes about because we see these oppressive bureaucracies and regimes, and it comes across a little fascicity. It comes across as being dominating and overriding people's freedoms and such. And especially here in the States, we love our personal freedoms, even very small personal freedoms. And when they're taken away, we tend to root for the person who dismantles the very hard structured rules in place. But then the person who brings too much chaos, who's always pushing against the boundaries, eventually that person, society looks at that person like, all right, calm down. Like, just because there's no rule doesn't mean you need to push the boundaries. And of course, then it vacillates back and forth with the extremism and stuff like that. So I like it. Shitlord says Northerns and Southerns. Anybody ever done a Viking Western? See, is chaos versus chaos. Would we consider the portrayal of Viking culture in current media to be like chaos versus chaos? Like Viking cultures where there's a constant like one-upsmanship that you never know who's really in control until the next person who's strong enough takes over control. And then our protagonists, we just happen to be following the people who we think are they're not the good people, they are the least evil people. Or not the word evil's wrong. They are the best choice in a terrible situation, I guess would be the thing. The Ant King says, in the East, they washed their hands and shampooed their hair. In the West, the plague eventually happened. Order versus chaos. Yeah, yeah. Hey, what's our? I heard this before, and I don't. This is very funny, and pretty sarcastic. But I heard in a podcast I was listening to, yet just yesterday, and said the greatest export from Europe was the Independence Days around the world. And I was like, oh shit. I love that saying. And it kind of makes me think like here in the States, one of the greatest imports in the United States was like disease and stuff and drug addiction. It's like, yeah, can't get away from that, from alcohol to other things. Like that's something that we're pretty proud of as well. Drew says, I would say he cannot retire since the fascist circumstances he creates will always lead to social friction. Okay. I wouldn't argue with that. Batman is always like looking for the next. He's obsessed with finding the next problem and solving it, and everyone else is like, Superman's like, dude, like really, like I don't think about killing you. Batman's like, oh, I always think about killing you because I might have to do it one day. Mike says, Batman breaks down when you consider his wealth. He could fix a lot of those. Yes, he could fix a lot with those funds. Yet he chose to create toys to fight crime instead of fixing the causes of that crime. You are so right. That also breaks the reason of like being a superhero in the first place. It's like, yeah, you're multi-billionaire, industrialist or something like that. But do you really need to dress up that way? Because you sure could change the educational systems and, infrastructure. I'm looking at you, Detroit, and your lead-filled water and things like that. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Zamar's like fascistic, not fashionistic. Yeah, fascistic. I don't know. I just made that up, pulled that out of my ass. The Ant King says, if you watch Sopranos, though, they routinely break their own practices and mainly whack each other. That is very true as well. I mean, some would think organized crime is organized, but it often isn't, right? Because it breaks itself. It breaks its own rules to try to achieve its own goals. It's a organized crime wants to tell everybody else to act correctly, and each individual wants to be their own agent of chaos, I guess. Yeah, Rorschach is poor. He's Batman, but with no resources. Yep, walking around basically eating cold beans out of cans and not washing very much and walking around with the end is nigh sign. Yeah, Night Owl is Batman with the wealth and with the same problem. Could fix shit. Yep. Yeah. Free market always prevails, and the mob is the free market. Kind of. Although I got a problem with free markets, though. I still we think free markets are like Olympic sprints where everybody gets to run at their own pace, and whoever's the fastest, strongest wins. But really, free markets are people running in those races with barbed wire around baseball bats and mobbing up together and beating up individuals along the way. It's like we think it's fair, but it's not. So, yeah, and I think that part of it is unfortunate. Trying to keep up with you guys. Yeah, Shai says, can Batman just throw money at the problem? The government already does that. Defund the Batman. That's funny. That's hilarious. I like that. What just got highlighted? Yeah, I mean, and it's true though. Yeah, because Gotham is supposed to be so corrupt that I mean, it's a cyclical problem, right? Batman's so rich he could throw money at the problem, but if he did, people would be just scamming off the top. So would Batman really want to throw money at it if he's just going to make corrupt people rich? I don't know. Yeah, I don't think Batman could fix everything with those funds. He is known in the comics and anime shows to do a lot of charities. The issue is corruption. The rich eat his charities for wealth. Yeah. Yep. Oh, it doesn't. That's weird how my chat just went. Rorschach is a role model for us all. Yeah, to the very end. to the very end. He stuck by his. Yes, Rorschach, despite being a little, he's got a little fascism in him, but Rorschach to the end was like, I'm about truth, even if it kills me. Like he's like, oh no, I'm gonna get killed at this point, but I can't live in a world that's a lie, and that's kind of a cool character concept. And he's a little and he's psycho too. Yeah. Yep. Well, look, with combining these two comments here, Drew says Rorschach is a psycho, not a role model, but just a principled citizen as well. I mean, well, not just a principled citizen. So yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah, and Rorschach was based off Deadman. It does bring up a point. Rorschach was actually created off of a character known as the Question, who also had a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. He kind of out there kind of character. Yeah. The Question is, yeah. Now, Taysom Bernat, who does not live in the States, does mention the thing is you can't stop the free market. Just look at the Soviet Union. They always had a mad black market, no matter how hard the state tried to crack down on it. That's very true. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, very true. Yeah. Yeah, Shai says, what did Rorschach do that was actually crazy? I haven't listened to it. Yes. Drew says Heath from Heath's Geekverse did have a show the other day about breaking down the Watchmen, which I'm going to listen to today because I have very many hours on hand about breaking down the Watchmen and the question of things. And this is why I always feel like extremism doesn't work. There's always, there's both time and fluidic ethics and morality always take place, right? Yeah, here's a hot take. No superhero trademark owned by DC and Marvel is lawful good. I agree with that. I think some would claim that Superman and Captain America are probably the first two most recognizable lawful and good characters in a world of chaos. And I think they're the closest you could get to it before breaking it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Is yeah. It's as close to lawful and good as you. I think those two characters are as close as you could get to it. That the most popular ones. Until I mean, you could make the case that Shazam, as a kid, is probably more lawful good than Superman would be, which is why they came in a conflict with each other. And that's part that could be more maturity as well. Yeah. Homelander, oh shit, yeah. Oh no. Yeah, it's the most boring genre. It single-handedly destroyed the film industry. I'm going to agree and disagree with you. I think that's just bad writing. I don't think it's the genre. I think it's just the writing itself. No one complains. Let me. I was going to say it negatively. I'll do it the positive way. Success cures everything, right? So when things are great, no one complains about the problems that it exhibits. When things are no longer good, all of the flaws start exposing themselves. So yeah, success cures everything. No one complains when there's success at the end of it. No one complains about all the bullshit that happened to get there. And that includes some of the most harsh things that have happened in history. That success, people will go, oh, well, that was successful. I guess it was worth it, but when there's problems with a thing, and I'm bringing this back to creativity. When things are badly written, when they are over budget, when they have overstayed their welcome, when they are derivative. Then we start looking at all the flaws and go, oh, yeah, that's terrible. We need to get rid of it. I mean, for example, we don't complain. We've placed superhero stories into its own category, but nobody complains about like police procedurals or medical procedurals or romantic comedies. Like, oh, we need to stop romantic comedies because there's too many of them. We don't do that. And it's just the same thing, right? Yeah, it just happens to be making the most money, or used to be anyway. Love Homelander as a character too. Yeah, Zamara says they both went against their governments in their respective worlds, and they break the law by vigilantism. And here's the law versus chaos, order versus law versus order, chaos versus chaos, and things of that nature. And that is, do we, when we create a setting for our characters and our players to be in, are we expecting them to break the rules or follow the rules? So, for example, Captain America, Superman are supposed to be icons. They are supposed to be unrealistically iconic. And when their governments, when their rules are no longer operating in the lawful and or good region, they break those rules. But is it reasonable to, like, is it reasonable for us to assume that they're going to accept those rules? It's like, no, you know, we've had, you know, in the real world, we've had rules, and one of those rules was, oh, I don't know, like indentured servitude and slavery. Does that mean we're supposed to accept it? No, we don't accept it as a thing that should be a real rule. You know, so are the characters breaking a rule, or are the characters reinforcing a rule that should have been in place in the first place? You know, the fair treatment by the law. No, what's another one with Miranda rights? No unlawful search and seizure. You know, so if police before Miranda was unlawfully searching and seizing things, is that a good thing? Is that the law? No, that we go, nah, there was a problem. That's why we created a rule to make sure that that doesn't happen any longer. So I think we can make an argument in small time periods versus long time periods of whether, you know, our iconic characters are instilling something. I hear you, chat. Yeah. Yeah. Homelander might be the closest, but he still does things not sanctioned by the government, just pardoned. Yeah. No unlawful search and seizure. The Fourth Amendment went out the window a long time ago. Well, then there's the intricacies of being what is it? Dungeons and Dragons, being devils, being lawful evil. Like, I know what the rule is, but if I know a way around that rule to do a thing, right? Like, some would say, to get around unlawful search and seizure, they created a seatbelt law that you must have your seatbelt on. So if they see that your seatbelt is off, they have the right to stop you, in which case now they have the right to search and seize, right? And the argument about there's the intricacies of the law, and do you eliminate a law to allow more freedom? Do you just start stacking more rules on top of the rules? And that happens in our own tabletop role-playing community, right? Like, there's a reason why we call people rules lawyers. And it's not because rules lawyers make games better. It's because there's a negative connotation with a rules lawyer who starts ignoring the narrative of the story and the rules as intended, and then starts manipulating the rules and goes, well, I can make a peasant railgun because the rules allow me to get a free action. And if I get 5,000 people to free action pass themselves, you know, a dagger to each other, I can make a dagger move, you know, 1,000,000 miles an hour in an instant, right? And that goes like, well, the rules say that, but is that how it was intended? Not necessarily, you know. Yeah. So says devils, lawful evils can figure out ways to cheat within the law. Yep. But do they get to make up the laws like the government does? Well, there's a little bit of that too. You know, there is a bit of Palpatineism in lawful evil, right? I'm going to vote myself emperor, and everyone goes, does the two finger clap like Optime, yes, that's a good idea, and then the person, then the Palpatinism of it goes like, well, since I voted myself emperor and you guys said I could, then I can make up all the rules I want because that's the rule that was established. Now, circling back just a little bit back into Northern's, Southern's, Eastern, Western storytelling, let's be aware that when we make our settings, what is the expectation of our players? Are we establishing a lawful and ordered society and expecting our players to throw monkey wrenches into it? Because sometimes we can get upset with not knowing what those expectations are. So, for example, if you're creating a setting where respect of the nobility, you know what? Let me make this even. Let me break this down to an even smaller problem that has existed since the days of yore, back in the OSR, right? Back with the Red Box and Beckme and all that kind of stuff. Your players walk down the road. They come to the city state. Just before they enter the gates, guards stand before them and they say, "Ho there, fine adventuring citizens. You wish to enter in, but we require a toll, a fee, 2 copper pieces from each of you to enter into the town." And guess what? Some players literally go ham. They just go hard as a mother on all the guard. They dare ask me to pay a toll? F that, I'm not paying shit. And they start drawing weapons and fighting, and you're like, oh, let's relax. This society has rules. Your characters live in this society. Wouldn't you know what these rules are? Like, there's no way you would survive to 3rd level because you'd end up dying before you even got the 1st level if this is how you act when someone requests 2 copper pieces from you. And so what is the expectation? Are players assumed to make characters in a world where it is made up of law and order? Or are they expected to make characters in a world that is made up of chaos, that they will be randomly besieged on city-state roads and things and given a toll, and the players are like, we've never been asked tolls before. Well, all of us, hey, we're the banditry, we're demanding a toll. And is it okay for the players to slaughter them? Maybe, maybe not. But expectations should be brought in. And now some settings, like post-apocalyptic settings versus knighthood or samurai stories, kind of lend themselves to telling us stories like, hey, listen, if we're going to play a Legend of the Five Rings in a samurai story, you're expected to show some kind of decor when in the court of the kings, the daimyos, the shogun, right? Not just, oh, he told me what to do, draw sword, slaughter, because some players will get pissed off. World of Darkness. Some players will get pissed off if their vampire gets hunted down and killed by all the other clans for breaking a rule. When the players are like, well, I was expected. You're being unfair to me. I'm a vampire. I should be able to drain the blood of anybody I want. Hey there, Yanada. Hi there. It says, look who's back. I ended up missing the live show, but I'll see from the beginning later. Well, you don't have to do that, but I do appreciate it. And thank you very much from someone from the lower America. I really appreciate that. Well, unless you flip the earth upside down, in which case you would be above. Shitlord says, never mind terrorism, drugs are all it takes. That's true. Listen, I'm in the Ohio Valley. We are unfortunately a top generator of like meth and fentanyl distribution and other things like that. So yeah, we know that. Yeah, we're part of that. Druten says, tolls at a city gate seems like a stupid idea. I highly doubt those are historical. Oh, well, no. Well, listen, most things in fantasy are not actually historical anyway. My point being is that when we expect our players to make characters in a world, first of all, as world generators, we expect our players to make characters who understand the mechanisms of the world. Okay. So if they exist in a world where it's common to pay a toll to go into a city state, then they should make characters that understand it. Now, they could bristle at the idea or come across and go, they've never charged this before. What the hell's going on? And that could be a question. But sometimes players make characters, and they purposefully make characters that do not fit into the world, that they become agents of chaos in a world where it's expected for them to toe the line. I'm looking at Legend of the Five Rings as an example, in which you are expected to behave culturally in a manner respective in that world. For example, I suggest very much to watch the anime Blue Eye Samurai. It's technically not called Blue Eyed Samurai, it's Blue Eye Samurai. But in that setting, we have characters that are judged unfairly by their deformities. Blue eyes, born with no hands, blind, etc. And those characters are judged for their deformities socially amongst the whole population. Individually, they are expressing themselves and bristling somewhat against the system and trying to work within the system. And many times we have players who create characters who would literally be like, oh, I'm not going to accept this at all. Or are they ones who accept their fate? Hey, my character has blue eyes and I know I'm going to be hated for it. I need to hide them and still try to navigate a world in which I'm considered evil and a demon and corrupted because of a random birth anomaly. Drew says the planet is a globe. There is no upside or downside. Exactly. It is, although it is pretty interesting to see like the globe tilted or turned upside down and how it looks and stuff to our eye. Just because, you know, standardization and stuff. It's pretty fun. It's very easy to do that, to flip a map upside down. I'm looking at you, Coyote and Crow, which flips the uncolonized United States upside down. I cannot remember the name of the uncolonized United States. Mahakoa? I cannot remember it. Anyway, and it does look a little bit odd to the eye. So that's actually a really good cheat if you want to make a map, but you're like really bad at making maps. Just take a chunk of the earth, look at how it's made, twist it, start turning it, start maneuvering it upside down, you know, basically start going tick, 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 tick until it becomes unrecognizable. And then just use that for your fantasy map or something like that. Yeah, pretty interesting. So anyway, guys, thank you for letting me pull things out of my ass. I really appreciate it. I understand that I didn't present any visuals because I don't think you need to see it, but to think about what type of world we're setting. Are we setting a world where there is law versus law or order versus order? Are we setting up a world where it's thrown into chaos and we expect our players to establish some kind of order, which I think is a very good idea. In order versus order, what are the rules? What are rules that we all agree on at the table? And then how are we disrupting those rules to bring them back into alignment that we all agree upon? In chaos versus law, what kind of law are the characters bringing? Are they bringing back civilization and humanity and a fair treatment to all in a world where everyone's being mistreated? Looking at you, post-apocalyptic stories are very much that we're forgetting our humanity and our main characters are bringing that back. Is it chaos versus chaos? Is it a world where the rules don't matter, the characters are involved in that world and they don't care what the rules are, and it is straight up everybody for themselves? Maybe piracy fits into that. I'm trying to think of a modern chaos versus chaos. Modern Viking storytelling might fit into that. Also, stories about criminals where we what's the game? Blades in the Dark follows chaos versus chaos. Like there are air quotes rules of engagement, but really it's just a bunch of gangs fighting other gangs, and the only order brought to bear is what the group brings to amongst themselves. They're not trying to establish this order to anybody else. It's just amongst themselves. They're loyal to themselves, and the rest of the world can go F themselves. Is it law versus chaos? Are the characters, do you want your players to be agents of chaos in an overwhelmingly corrupt world where order, like Equilibrium, like Star Wars and the Empire, like Rebel Moon and the Motherland, I don't know, like Cyberpunk with the corporations that have taken over everything, and there's giant class stratification, and our characters like thread the needle of disruption. And lastly, no, that's not lastly. That is it. Law versus law, chaos versus chaos, and then chaos with characters bringing law, and then law with characters bringing chaos. So anyway, woo! I can't even keep track of my own bullshit. But thank you very much. Let's see, you guys. Yeah, Drew says thank you for letting us inspect your moist hole. You know, it's weird because like moist is a word that sounds like what it is. Think about that for a minute. Yes. Yeah. Sometimes things just come out of the hole. Zamar says, remember, love with your heart, and for all else, rah, rah, fight the power. Yeah, fight the power. Except forgetting your humanity, that was the real point of Road Warrior, not just a Western. Yeah. And bringing the Road Warrior brings humanity to others while losing it, while being an agent who is barely holding on to his own humanity, but basically being an agent of chaos. Yeah, but bringing law to everybody else. Yep. Drew says, I like how medieval maps usually put east up, and thus the maps look indeed very different. That is very true. That's very true. As a matter of fact, if you can find yourself copies of like old coastal maps and regional maps and things like that, it is pretty interesting to see how they're flipped around and such, and just steal from them. Yep. Yeah, Shai says, isn't Batman a modern chaos versus chaos? I don't know. It's weird. I'm never sure if Batman is trying to bring law and order or whether he's just indulging in his own violent tendencies and leaving chaos behind him. Because you don't ever really see Batman like putting like rules and politicians in place. Oftentimes, I don't know. It's really well, no, there are storylines where he is like Commissioner Gordon. Jumunginger on Netflix for modern day Viking story. I have not taken a look at that storyline. Now I understand that there's what are the other Viking stories? There's Vikings and there's what the names just I'm losing the names of the different Viking stories. Stories that have been on Netflix or are on Netflix. But there is a Norse one with the modern day kids, young people that are the modern day reincarnations of the Norse gods and such. Yeah. Yeah, existence is chaos versus chaos. All order is transient. That is true. And entropy is the rule. I don't know. That's very defeatist, but I get your point. Because things are kind of boiling down to like an entropic point where things are starting to collapse in on itself. Yeah. Yeah, Shai says moist is the word that usually makes people everybody uncomfortable. Like I could do a whole ASMR channel on just the word moist. Just start gumming bananas and stuff really close into the microphone. Yeah. Yeah, the real Batman kills people, right? I know you get that argument. Batman doesn't kill. I'm like, yeah, he does. Yeah. Now, he doesn't murder. He doesn't go after innocent people, but when people start pulling out heavy weapons at him, he very much turns those weapons against those individuals. You know, he doesn't have a problem shoving a grenade down someone's pants and dropping them down an elevator shaft, right? That's what he does. And he puts lots of people in hospitals who really should be dying from their injuries. He just doesn't go after innocent individuals. Shai says, according to my 3 Viking museum visits, the real life Vikings were nowhere near as interesting as we'd like to believe. Hell, hardly any of them had metal weapons. Um, well, yeah, that's storytelling, right? You got to make things larger than life, getting characters and other people, historical figures larger than life. I'm looking at you, movie RRR, which I love that movie. Making people into mythological figures and things. That's kind of cool. Of course, tomorrow we're going to talk about Obsidian Star, the role playing game that I'm building in front of everyone. I am doing things behind the scenes, doing layout and rules characterizations. The most difficult part now is me working on character options. It's very difficult. Someone asked to get access to the rules, and for some reason, I can't find their notification. It's really weird. The real life Vikings drank a lot of milk. That's a really weird, strange, cool bit of information. I didn't know that. I always heard that that drinking milk was supposed to stop after adolescence, but it's really weird. Mike says, work beckons. Great day, all. All right, Nightcrawler. Bam, he's out. And the same with all the rest of you guys. Come on, get out of here. We'll talk about other things later. Guys, have a great one. I will see thee tomorrow. Have a great one. Love and peace. Bye.